Thank you.
Also stools.
What'd you say?
Also stools. I'm always like,
Yeah, stools are. But they match my book.
damn. Also, you're giving like neutrals.
Here we go.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming tonight. My name is Alexa and I'm at the events team here at Books Are Magic. We are so excited to have Jami Attenberg and Mary H.K. Choi with us tonight to celebrate A Reason to See You Again. Yes! Before we get started, I just want to point out some logistics for how tonight's event is going to go. We have a bathroom right by the Moleskin Spinner, and then we'll be doing a hand-raised Q&A towards the end of the discussion tonight, so start thinking of some questions. And then after the talk, Jami will be signing and personalizing books at the table next to where you all checked in. I'll point that out at the end of the event. And then if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of A Reason to See You Again online using the link in the live stream description below. All right, A Reason to See You Again. It starts in the 70s and spans over 40 years following a troubled mother and her 2 daughters. The novel takes us on a kaleidoscopic journey through motherhood, the American workforce, the tech industry, the self-help movement, inherited trauma, and the many unexpected forms that love can take. Jami Attenberg is a New York Times bestselling author of 7 books of fiction, a memoir, and most recently, 1,000 Words, a writer's guide to staying creative, focused, and productive all year round. She's the founder of the annual 1,000 Words of Summer project and maintains the popular Craft Talk newsletter year-round. Her work has been published in 16 languages, and she lives in New Orleans. Mary H.K. Choi, who's joining us tonight as well, is the New York Times bestselling author of Emergency Contact, Permanent Record, and Yoke. Her writing has been featured in The Atlantic, The New York Times, New Yorker, there's an ER missing, sorry y'all. It's been featured in New York too, and GQ. She's currently developing Permanent Record for film and Yoke for TV. She lives in New York City. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jami and Mary.
I actually have never written for the New Yorker, just fact check. They're so fancy.
Soon, any moment, it's going to happen. Should I? Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary. Hi.
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 Yay.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Are we speeding on the YouTube thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I hear you're reading.
I'm going to do a little bit of a reading from this book.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have so much fun talking to each other. I can't wait.
Yeah. How's audio for both of us? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. It's really nice to see all of you, by the way. It's really, really nice to see you. So I'm just going to read from the very beginning, a couple of pages. And the book is organized by year, and it sort of zooms forward every chapter zooms forward a couple of years, but I'm just going to start at the beginning with chapter 1, 1971. Oh, the games families play with each other. In the Cohen household, it was Scrabble, and they played it every Saturday night. This was one of Frida's rules. Telephone unplugged, the whole family together. The girls were still young enough that they had nowhere urgent to be but right there. Nancy, 15, Shelley, 12, idling in the living room with her father, Rudy, while Frida made popcorn in the kitchen. Tonight, Lawrence Welk led some orchestral tribute to America on the television set, Rudy nodding his head along to the music. Rudy, frail, angular, fading, but loving and present. A real bon vivant when he had the energy. I want him alive, thought Frida. I must feed him. A frantic feeling. Him. She must take care of him. She salted and buttered the popcorn in good, thick, fatty layers, humming as she delivered it in a Tupperware bowl to the family who sat sunken in a green velvet conversation pit. A lucite table at the center, set up with a game board. A family waiting. Press play. Shelley clapped for the popcorn. It smells divine, she said. What a delicious and satisfying treat. Shelley, always trying on words for size. She popped one piece of her after another into her mouth. She liked to have something to do with her hands, a place to direct her nervous energy, thought Frida. This whole family was nervous. Everyone was worried about Rudy, who had been sick and then not sick and then sick again. It had been this way for years. Malnutrition in his youth, in the camps, and all the stress then and always. Now he had a bad heart. He was 41 and looked 60. A little worse this year, but then again, what did worse mean when things had been bad for so long? So it was good for them to all be together, thought Frida, every Saturday. A regular moment for the family, private after the crowds at Shoal the night before. But also, she wanted to win at Scrabble. The girls were good at the game, competitive enough to keep things interesting. Frida had taught them some tricks, all the 2-letter words, the most potent available ways to use Q and X, their little sponge minds preparing for their next moves. Is anyone here a Scrabble player? Did you grow up in a really competitive Scrabble household? Yeah. Same. Oh, this is not my family, but I did grow up in that kind of household. There was Nancy organizing her tiles to be just so. She liked it when ideas clicked together easily and was sharp enough to find a few 5 or 6 letter words here and there. A tidy girl, demure, pretty, mildly interested in lots of things, but not one thing especially. She'd do all right, thought Frida, at this game in life. Shelley was the real challenger in the family, strategic, focused, unflappable, dark-haired, dark-eyed, healthy, peach-toned skin, a generally intense presence even for a child. She left no loose ends behind, blocked every exit and entry point if she could help it. Our little winner, thought Frida, smarter than everyone in the room, perhaps, but she better not beat me, thought Frida, not yet. Okay, that's it.
Amazing. Hi guys, I'm so happy to be here with you. And I also liked watching your feet do like cat making biscuits while you read. I was like settling and it was really cozy. Okay. Book 10. Fucking metal.
Thank you. I'm tired.
No, huge compliment. And we are like still somehow inside the same year as the 1,000 Words book release. So I'm really curious, like how does a human person come out with 2 books in the same year? Are you okay? And what's the data that you've gathered in your head, your body, your soul, and like, yeah, like as a person who has like done this, like how's it
to
settling?
do 2 books in a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I mean, I think it's antithetical. Most writers I know are like, I really do not like to self-promote. Like, we don't want to be out there. And we like to do readings, we like to talk to people, but we don't necessarily want to have to be spending all our time on social media, doing self-promotion, things like that. So I really was strategic at the beginning of figuring out ways to do things where I knew I was going to enjoy it, or I was going to appreciate the experience and connecting with people. Also, they're very different kinds of books. Like 1,000 Words is really, it's like this community grand experiment that's like paid off really well, and like it's so many people are involved with it and love it so much, so it's great. But it's so different. We were talking in the back. It's so different than like creating your piece of art. Like, it is about creating art, but my role in it is different than that. And this is like my beautiful piece of art that I made this year, or wrote it last year. I definitely have done enough. Like, I feel like I have like a reasonable tour this time, but I'm like, oh, you did all the work this year. Like, that's good that you did all the work this year, but don't do it. I wouldn't do it again. I mean, never say never, but it's really it's really been quite challenging. So I'm appreciative when people come. Thank you all for coming and support whatever it is that I'm doing.
No, it is really, really cool. And, as a You reader, longtime fan, so as the patron saint of dysfunctional families, how does it feel to return to the form?
Yeah, because it's been 5 years since I've had a novel out. I honestly didn't intend to write it, and then as I was writing it, I was like, as a family novel, and then I was writing it, and I was like, all right, this is the last family novel I'm going to write. And that's how it feels for like or at least for a very long time. Like, I feel like I've said a lot. I've like, really like put a pin in it. This book is as much a commentary on the idea of writing a family novel. I mean, I don't say it, but it's there. That's what I was sort of pushing through along the way. And I love writing family, though. I do. It's really quite enjoyable because we all got one.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
And it helps me work through things. Again, this is not my family, but when you meet people that are challenging, which writing a tough character that's what it feels like. Oh, I'm going to spend a year really getting to know this person, a tough mom, a tough daughter, to like explore the relationships between sisters and mothers and things like that. You end up working things out no matter what.
Totally. And like, you mentioned that you're like, hey, guess what? This is not my family. Hi. But I do wonder about, like, between the memoir and your last book and Craft Talk, your Substack, does it feel like this, like, sort of conscious gear shift to be like, okay, people that I talk to, I'm going to go over here now because I've written a book that I have made up that isn't about me or my process or my life, and I wonder, like, how that shift feels.
I mean, I really like writing fiction. I love it. Like, that's like the ultimate gift, is that you get to go and spend time writing that novel. So the shift between writing something that's nonfiction-y, like the memoir or this, is that I don't have to worry about what's real. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like I just have to like, I mean, I want things to feel authentic and like like these characters should feel real. But it's kind of a relief to just be imaginative and playful and sort of not have to abide by any like rules or like worry about a legal reading, you know, or anything like that. Like just for it to be like, you know, this is this universe that I created all on my own.
Totally. And I, you know, because you have this like ongoing dialogue with like your readers through your Substack and Craft Talk and things like that, I'm wondering if, you know, because of this parasocial aspect to the way you talk to the people who read you, I'm wondering if there's any part of you that almost has to like distance yourself from this idea of the audience or like 1,000 words hive, you know, to create work that is kind of unburdened by this idea that you, or this like concept that you have of a reader that you must feel that you also know so well at this point.
But the same rules apply for every book that I write, which is that the first draft is for me. It's for nobody else but me. And then the second draft is really for like the readers, meaning my editor or my agent or my friends who are going to read my work, like where I'm like, I have to get this into a recognizable state for them, like so that they can, you know, react to it and that it's sort of clean in a specific kind of way. And then after I take all that kind of stuff, then I'm gonna like filter it and make it for like a bigger audience. But I always go into this knowing that it's just for me whenever I start something. It's my gift. It's like such a gift for yourself. I mean, I'm curious about how you feel about it too.
I mean, it's, you know, it's hard. I do have this thing where, you know, because of social media and because of like creative class and because of like, you know, the Terror Dome of like constantly seeing your own reflection and just being sort of mesmerized by it in like a masturbatory, really harmful way. Like, I do get twisted when I'm in an edit where I'm like, oh, they, you know, scare quotes, won't like this. And I think it's like amazing. And I think what I'm hearing is that there is no like conscious, like girding your loins against it thing.
But we don't know what anyone's gonna like. We have no idea going into this, like what's going to happen. Where like it's all a grand experiment all the time, right? Like I know this now after writing this many books that like you think you could write something that people would just, how could they not possibly love this? And then they're like, this made me feel bad or sad, and also like we don't know what position anyone is when they pick up the book. Like, did they have a bad day at work? You know,
Are they hungry?
Are they right? Are they hungry or like? Are they sad? Are they lonely? Like what, you know, books mean so many things to so many different people. So that's why it's always important to just do the thing for yourself because you can't control the way that it's received.
No, totally.
Yeah.
And intellectually, I fully get that. But like, I think this is why you have 10 books and I'm sitting here being like, so I remember, I think it was like 2020, we were having coffee at Blue Bottle kind of around here. And you were working on this book, I believe, or some form of this book, because you said like, I have this crazy story and it's doing something really gnarly with time and my notebook is getting super weird. And I remember being like, huh. And it was hot. And so like, then I was kind of like, whatever. But then, so was that this book? And like, so what aspect of the story came to you first?
So the first aspect of the book, I always end up writing the middle first, but I don't think it's the middle, I think it's the beginning. But then it's some character, you know, will show me the way in and I'm like, well, I'll just write that down and listen to everything they're saying. And it's usually like when they're at kind of a crisis point, I would say. And that sort of helps me to see like what the stressors are gonna be and what the stakes are gonna be for a book. But there's always a story that comes before that. So I'll write like maybe what I think is the first part of the book, and it's really just for the first 2/3 of a book. And then I'll go back and be like, oh, actually, there's another third, or there's like all of part one came much later than the rest of the book.
Whoa. So like, but which character was it? Can you say?
It was Shelley.
Really?
I think the first thing I wrote was her sitting at the airport bar I had a vision of her as a character, but the first thing I wrote was just this woman sitting in there. I think I've written a lot of scenes at airport bars, I'll be really honest with you. But not all of them make their way into a book. But that was sort of the beginning. Excuse me.
Do you want to take some water?
Yeah, maybe I'll just have a little
I think that's fine,
sip.
but you can have
It's night 3, day 3 of events. So, yeah, it's a good place to start because airports are such lonely places.
Totally.
And there's nothing you can do but help reflect on your entire life and all the choices that you made in the 45 minutes that you're waiting. Am I the only person who does this? No. That's what airports are made for. I thought you knew that. Not flying anywhere, having existential crises, that's it. Especially with a drink or something like that. So that was really the starting part. Like it was somebody who was going to visit her family for the holidays and she didn't really want to go. So I knew what she looked like first, and I had a vision of her, a different kind of vision of her. But the first thing that I wrote was her sitting at this airport bar, waiting to catch a flight. And you never know if you're going to use that stuff, but it did stick. It did stay in.
Yeah, and it's kind of like an en media res or like big data dump. You're like, I get that part, and I'm really envious because that's not how I write at all. And like I relate with the airport bar.
Yeah.
I mean, airports are like adult day camp.
Do you have full concepts first? Is that what you do?
I have that. It depends. It all depends. Like sometimes the ending comes to me first, and that's when I know I'm actually fucked, because then
you have to write a whole book.
Or I'm like retrofitting, and I'm like, was that a phantom? What was that? Like, is that actually a fever dream? Is it right? Is it wrong? And so that's the book I'm working on now, and that's the reason why it's late. Okay, so do
you want me to stop asking you questions about your writing? Is it making you feel bad? We don't have to.
No, I mean, it depends. Like sometimes when someone's like, how's the book? I'm like, that's a hate crime.
No.
But then
I'm just curious about your process. That's all.
It really, really depends. Like sometimes it's that person who just sits on your shoulder and won't shut up, and their voice is just like so like clear.
Yes.
And they won't leave you alone. And
your work is all about voice. Yes.
I think so. And that's really hard because there's this thing, I think it's called plot and stakes, and like that's the part where I'm trying to like navigate and be like, oh yeah, they call this an ending.
You don't need any plot.
And I do think
some fun characters.
Well, I do think it's like a tell of algo writing or AI writing or like, just churning out, where it's just like so much stakes, and I'm like, I don't care about this person. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying not to do that, but like I'm writing an adult book after writing YA, and that already sounds so NC-17, but like, and that I'm shook. Like I've written in the first person, this one's in third, and it's rotating POV, and plus I'm autistic, and so I'm already lost inside my own body. And I'm very disassociative, so sometimes it's like artists who don't like drawing hands, where none of my characters have bodies, and I'm like, no, you guys have to go places and like talk to other people. So that's been hard.
When I was a kid, I used to draw faces, but I would get so occupied with the nose that I would never get to eyes or lips or anything like that. It would just be or whatever, but I would just be like one thing, and I'm like, this has to be perfect.
Can that be like a character? That kind of reminds me of like...
That's the subtext of all my novels, so...
I love that for us. And it kind of reminds me of Julio Torres's Fantasmas. There's a skit where someone's drawing all these dicks in the bathroom, and the teacher's getting concerned, and they're having a conversation, and it's like, is it that kid? And the kid is a little swishy. And the other teacher's like, no, kids like that only draw eyes. And I was like, that super tracks. Anyway, so yeah, I actually do love talking about writing. It just feels, I made Jami sign my book first. She had like 65 things to do. I was like, hey, hi. And I kind of feel like I'm using this as therapy, and plus it's on YouTube. I'm
that sounds very fun.
Fix my book.
No, I'm game. I'm really game. Yeah.
I know. Okay. So you've written and shared, and we talked about like the research challenges inherent in writing like 40 frickin' years, and like anachronism, pop culture references, things like that. And then you had this part where, and I read it in the acknowledgments too, and then you had this part where like one character is like into experimental music, and then the Shelley character, enters the tech industry in like a really crucial time. And there's a part of me where I was like, Jami, no! Because like already you have so much research to do. And I'm like really curious, like if there's ever a point where you're like, well, actually you're an author now and this person has a newsletter. Or if you were like, no, like let's go.
Research, yeah. Research is really, there's some fiction writers, and do you love the research? Yeah, the research is like, when do I stop, really?
Wow, say
because
less.
it's
No, that's awesome. That's super.
You don't like to do research?
I hate research.
Oh,
I have no
but make it
executive
fun.
functioning.
Like you got to make it fun. Okay, so like one of the things that I did for this book was I was, because it's set in all these different decades, and this book is so much about how people look and how they're representing themselves to the world. Like I write more about clothes than I've ever written about before in this book, and maybe it was kind of because I started writing it during the pandemic, and I was wishing that I could just go out and be dressed up somewhere. So that might be like a layer of it, but. So I did a lot of research on clothes. I did a lot of research on like, the development of the mobile phone, even though it's only it's a very much a backdrop of the book, the actual tech aspect of it. And I did a lot of, actually it was Rachel Syme. I was asking her about perfume and what perfumes people be wearing in a certain decade or something like that. And she told me about this website that you can buy perfumes from all different decades. Like,
Whoa.
so they'll just get like these little sample sizes of like perfumes from the 1980s, male versus female. So I was like, I really just want to know how this character smells. And so I would order colognes and perfumes from those decades in order to, I know. And so that's fun, and you would love that.
I would love that.
That's the kind of research
Although
you
I
should
would
do.
mess up and I'd like order Cool Water or Drakkar and be like, PTSD, wrong guy. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
or like, Yope exclamation. I'd be like, oh wow, it smells like bullies. Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, just make it fun.
No, that you're right. Like, damn it. And then she cried.
Because I have said this a million times, but like putting out a book is so hard and so challenging, and this is such a like beautiful reward to see people and to be able to spend basically force you to spend time with me, which is great, and I love it. But like the actual like all the nerve-wracking stuff that goes along with publishing is just, it's hard. It's really, really hard, and so you have to figure out ways to make you should enjoy what you're doing. You should enjoy it and make it playful and want to be there. I'm not yelling at you if that seems like I am.
No, like.
But that's all. And you're somebody you have so many interests, and you're so fascinated with aesthetics, and so it just seems like you could find fun ways to, like snacks. You like have like that book that's all about snacking. How many bags of snacks did you buy as research for that book?
I feel like you're trying to trick me into liking writing.
Anyway, okay, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so there's this part, and this whole conversation is spoilers free. So there's this part where at age 21, Nancy makes a choice, and her sister Shelley, who doesn't support it, and she goes, then it's the rest of your life already, Nancy. Then the rest of your life starts now. Are you really ready for everything to start now? And I just love that this huge moment is almost kind of trolly because of everything that happens afterwards. And so it's like you get married, your life keeps going. You have a kid, your life keeps going. Your husband dies, your life keeps going. You get this insane job, your life keeps going. Your kids leave the house, your life keeps going. You do something heinous at work, your life keeps going. The lives keep relentlessly lifing and evolving and being really like confounding expectations in like really real ways. And what was I'm really curious about the process and the system of like keeping track of this and like letting them develop. And I'm picturing like an FBI murder board, like with red string and like surveillance photos. And so how did you time so much time?
I mean, what I did was I wrote their trajectories first. Like I was like, here's all the things that I know I want to have happen to these characters. I didn't plot it out at the beginning, but as I started writing along, I could see little points in the future. So I was like, let me write those points. Let me have a vague idea of what year it's happening. Some were really obvious, like had to be, like the very last chapter of the book is in 2007, and it had to happen in 2007. There was something that there's a historical touchstone for that. But there were other things along the way where I was like, okay, let me massage a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and see how it, if it fits into it. And so then I had to go back and like choose the specific years as I went, after I'd written their storyline, I went back and chose the actual specific years. And then I even went further and looked for some more cultural touchstones in that year. And looking for those cultural touchstones made me revise it in a specific kind of way. I cannot think of a specific example, but I know that I did it, because sometimes it was literally just like who was on the cover of Time magazine in August, 1996. Like that's helpful to me, and that helped me to, write it in. Like I have a scene when I have Shelley in the airport, and she's sitting there and she's going to go visit her family, and she's got a Bloody Mary, and she's dreading going to visit her family, and I'm like, let me just send her over to the gift shop because she's got to buy a gift for her niece. And who, when you're at the gift shop, that was when they used to have like 30 copies of Time magazine of the same cover. Now it's just one of everything, But it used to be like you could go and you could wait, and then it was like who was like impressing you? What was the face that was impressing you? And I was like, oh, it was like, it was a war criminal that was on it, and he was a terrorist. And I was like, actually, then it like made me write the line, do you know who the real terrorists are? Your family. And so that was how that happened. So it was like I knew she was going to go there, like all those little things. And so you just sort of have to be really curious, and you have to be really open to things. You have to trust the process a little bit, even if it's nerve-wracking. But be really receptive to all these little like points of light and all these little guideposts along the way.
That's a really vivid answer, and I'm hearing that you give them so much latitude, and you're like inside looking out at their eyeballs and moving around in space, and like I actually really feel that jumps to a different question, which makes me resent you. But no, like, so you open up so much space. It's like so expansive. You've got 40 years to play with. You have all these characters throughout their, some of them their entire lives, and it's like you really let these characters cook in their moral ambiguity and their dysfunction. And like I actually pictured you like Sandra Bullock in Gravity, and your characters are like George Clooney, and they're tethered, but they're really, really far, and they're out in space. And I get the feeling that you don't successfully do a book like this unless you kind of release them and sort of trust that they'll go out there and still find ways, either, not necessarily just like redeem themselves in some sort of like moral hierarchical sense, but like evoke compassion, or even be like uncomfortably relatable no matter how far and deep they go. And I'm wondering if you always have that trust, or building this like expansive, cavernous realm made you have to like grow a tolerance for that discomfort, or if it's not even uncomfortable for you.
Yeah, no, I think once they show up, I'm so curious about them that I just kind of want to run with it. Sometimes characters are, I don't think it's like a dead end necessarily, but sometimes characters run, they get to where they're going and they're done. So sometimes characters are like just like a paragraph, like a minor character, and sometimes they go for pages and pages and pages. And I just really, it's like I'm just really full of trust for it at this point that I'm gonna, at the end of the book, I would sort of walk around the room and talk to all the characters in my head, whatever, weird, but
no, I love it.
That. And so I'm like, are we done? Like, did you say everything that you needed to say? Like, have you been heard? And that's how I know it's done. But my last few novels were really more constricted and compact. So like, All This Could Be Yours took place over the course of a day with some flashbacks. So that's like a built-in claustrophobic kind of thing. And then All Grown Up it had some time expansion to it, but essentially it was like her in this apartment in New York. And it was really kind of about that space. So then when I wrote my memoir, I was like, oh, I get to go to all these, I did go to all these cities, and it does span all these years, and I like appreciated the push and pull of that. And so then I wanted to apply that to this novel. So I went in thinking this is going to span a lot of time, and they're going to get to travel, and they're going to get to move, and this is about the claustrophobic element of it is just the relationship of the mother and the two daughters, because they always sort of keep returning to each other. But everything else, I just was like, this is great. Let's see what happens. Let's go to Paris and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really feel that. I was going to ask you, like, as a person who makes stuff, and as well, and as a You fan, I kind of kept thinking about how this book, to me, and I don't know if it's the experience in writing it, almost feels like a companion piece to All This Could Be Yours.
And the middle scenes.
And the middle scenes. Yeah. And it's like, but there's this thing, it's almost like, it's like dad dies, and all this shit happens. And it kind of reminded me of like after J.J. Abrams did Felicity, he did Alias, because it's like, it's basically Felicity, but I get to do all this espionage, which is fun. And so like, I was wondering how like, Victor couldn't be more different from Rudy. the nature of time, as you were saying, is so different. The role even that family secrets play is like so nuanced and so different. And the sort of whiffs of fatalism, and I don't know if that's like a product of the time constraint, but the whiffs of fatalism in all this could, versus like the careening, sort of like yawning openness and like still the possibility of this book. I was wondering if like you wanted to do Felicity, but with espionage.
I got that. It was. I mean, it was definitely a response to, like I said, the memoir, and it was also a response to that. We were talking earlier about writing against your instincts, and these are still, all my instincts are really in. I have a dream of writing a book against my instincts, and it's like has a happy ending. People fall in love, like stuff like that. So that's like my little secret side project that I want to do because I just want to see, because it's like it would be a really fun experiment. But this was, like I said, it was like I really, and especially in conversation also with the Middlesteins, it was a terrain that felt really familiar to me, and I really wanted to like explore it. But I felt like there were things there was just a little bit more that I had to say about this kind of family and family unit and where they came from, and writing about Jews also, and writing about people who are occupied with the idea of a nuclear family, whether it works for them or doesn't work for them. And this is sort of the people who reject that. Mm-hmm. So I was really interested in having a family that was never in the same room.
Ooh, yeah.
And that they're like, so much of their communication is like on phone, leaving messages, and because Shelley is a part of the development of the cell phone over a 20-year period, and how we sort of have changed the way we communicate over all those years. That was part of it too. Like, I wanted to have somebody who was interested in the way that people communicate, but it was just a terrible communicator with her own family too. So all those things were. Yeah, that was all part of it. Like, I wanted people to I didn't want to write a family novel, and then I thought, if it is a family novel, it's the kind of family that never sees each other or talks to each other, but when they do, it's always very direct, and you always say what you need to say, but also it's kind of passive aggressive too, because you can know your family, but then grow apart from them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you knew them so well when you were young, and then all of a sudden time has moved on, and you're like, still know who you are, but I don't know the intricacies of your life anymore.
No, totally. I mean, it's like projection, mystery, and then like total abject incuriosity where I'm like, I don't even wonder about you. Like, but as you were talking, I thought the really beautiful thing that I thought was really like fascinating to read, and until you said they're just never in the same room, I was like, oh, right, because like one, like, who can relate? And two, it's like, it's like reading words without vowels. Your brain just kind of like elides the thing and just fills in blanks. But I also think because of the nature of this family, even with the telecommunications thing, there is so much like triangulation. And so it is like you're talking to them, and it feels like they're talking to each other, even to me as an outsider, through other people, and then all the prism shit happening, the drama triangle.
But like, so many of the chapters are like, when you see them, it's like they hadn't seen each other in 3 years.
And it shows.
Or like, they don't see each other, but then they have one phone call in the chapter, and other things are going on in their lives that have nothing to do with their family. But the like consistency across the board is this moment of interaction with the family, either in person or but like that there's a vast distance between them. But yet at the same time, we're so much alike, our families. We see it all, that like whether you like it or not, there's just core parts of us that are always going to connect.
Totally. I mean, it's like that like vibration and. Also, that blast radius. It's like it could have just been a call for 3 years, but it's still like, like throughout time. So I'm really curious, how was it to edit this book over this much time, this many evolutions of this many lives? Like filmmakers say that they don't know how to make a movie until they're done making the movie, and I'm wondering if editing this felt that way.
Yeah, I did. I wrote about almost 20,000 words longer than what appears in the. Like, there were completely viable chapters that exist in the universe that it sort of, they don't really extend the storyline, but they're like other characters that show up. But that was the hardest, toughest edit that I did, where I was like, what is actually the core story? And I did that like last summer, I think, like a year ago summer, I think was when I was doing it, because everything got turned around really fast. So that was just me sitting, and alone in a room for 10 days or whatever it was, and just getting rid of all these characters that didn't feel extraneous to me necessarily because I loved them, but they were maybe extraneous to the story. It's like they were still valuable people, these characters, but they had to go. And they might show up somewhere else or not, but actually I believe that the exercise of writing them is still really valuable. And the experience that we have as writers when we get to know these characters, or if we're writing nonfiction even, and maybe we don't get to like use that interview, like the benefits that we get out of being a writer, even if it's not used, is still, it's still accessible, it's still available. You can write whatever and throw it away, but you had that experience of writing it, and you gain knowledge from writing it, even if it's just about yourself.
No, I'm just hearing like the repeated theme of like trust and like agency and like just all this stuff. It's really beautiful. We have time for one more question, so this is a 4-part question. Okay, so I know you just talked about killing your darlings. I was like, but this one question. Okay, so the book starts in 1971 and ends in 2007, like you said. But in 2004, there's this part that comes from Nancy, and it's in the first person, and it's a big lift. It's like a major inflection point where you're like, whoa, and then you strap in, and you're like, I don't know what Jamie's about to do with this person. And I find it so interesting because it's like 2004, the book ends in 2007, and I'm wondering, how did you know that happened there? Like, was there a problem that it solved? Like how did you know to do that?
Okay, I don't know. I just thought this seems like I like to have a late breaking twist. I like to have, it is like part of my like shtick. Right, like at this point in my fiction where like some new character is going to show up, or some new way of seeing a character is going to show up late in the game. It's almost like if you were writing it as a suspense novel, it's like the dramatic reveal or whatever it is. But in my suspense universe, it's the dramatic reveal is like something we learn about the character that was completely unexpected, and also that it's being told in a different kind of storytelling. So it's very playful for me to do something like that. I just heard her talking to me, or that I was sitting in the room. I don't want to give too much away about it, but like I just heard it and I was like, that seems like it would be fun. All of writing is just about giving yourself permission. And so I was like, I give myself permission to do this, and if it doesn't work, I can throw it away again. But I was like, ooh, it's so fun and juicy. And if we had time, I would have read that whole chapter because it's the most fun chapter to read out loud.
It gives too much away, though.
It gives way too much away. I have read it. I did read it once at a reading, like some fancy event or whatever, and I read it, and I gave the performance of my life. And people still talk to me about that performance. I did a really good job of it. And they're like, we don't even understand what this book is about, but we want to read it because it was like kind of batty or weird or whatever. So I don't know, I just like that stuff. Like, don't you like to read stuff where you're like, oh, this is wacky. Like, where'd this come from? And then just go with it, right? Like, that's entertaining to me as a reader. All these books are just books that I would want to read. That's what I'm writing, so.
I love that every answer is just like, it's just a casual trust fall. It's just what's going on.
Because you can just throw it away. You're not losing anything.
Totally, unless you live in scarcity. This is actually my last question. I'm so sorry, Mark. So first of all, I love the fucking ending because the whole time you're like, how is she going to stick the ending? And you do by refusing to stick it. Like, it just, like, I love the openness and this ending. And I also love the acceleration that happens in the book. Like, there's this Maggie Smith quote, like the Dowager Countess from Downton. And it's like, how does it feel to be working in your 80s? And she says, lunch is every 15 minutes. And like, I know, I'm in my mid-40s. I know that, like, 5 years from now is like Valentine's Day, like 10 years is like, I don't know, like Wednesday or whatever. And that's what I got from the cadence of this book and the type of ending that you chose. And like, not to be like, Jamie, let me infect you with my manufactured urgency, but like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling this as a storyteller right now? Are you feeling this as a writer, as a creator? Like, you're like, quick. or something.
Oh, you mean like how speedy I write?
Yeah,
it?
how speedy it is, how time feels.
Yeah, I mean, so like time for me, everything that happens is existing all the time. And I think it actually is existing all the time for all of us, whether we know it or not. And so like things that happen to us when we're like 6 years old sort of get stuck in us a little bit, and we are like responding to it. Whether it's not even about trauma, it's just like things that happen. And so like as we acquire all these experiences in our life, we're just always like experiencing them, and some are stronger than others, obviously. And so for me to like, the forward motion was sort of like risky, right? Like insisting that there was a forward motion to it, and then my response to it instinctively is to have all these like play with time so much, play with time shifts and things like that, because and it's really like, I don't know, it's just all, to me the beginning of the book is connected to the end of the book. I'm always trying to weave in references throughout the book. I'm always trying to make sure, what's the comedic term for like when you like repeat something or
Callback.
Yeah, I'm like, this whole book is just callbacks to me, whether you know it or not. Like to me it is, I'm like, oh, that happened then, and I'm going to talk about it. Like to me, like like Nancy's storyline, it to me is a 200-page joke. Like I seriously am like, oh, I mean, no one else knows it, but for me it was. I was like, oh, I've just been waiting for her to, when she gets to that speech, I'm like, I knew I was writing to that, like something like that for 200 pages before. And I knew what the joke of her was, and then I just had to like write to get there. So all of it is like, for me, like, also, you can just read this book and it's fine. You don't have to find any Easter egg if you don't want to. You could just read it and consume it, and it's meant to be just consumed as like a normal book. And don't worry about my feelings; it's fine. but also like this is like a game that I'm playing for myself with myself.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. And I love the title. It feels like exactly what you were saying. It's like a closed loop. It's like hi and also death. And it makes me like weepy. Yay! Thank you. Okay, we're doing some Q&As.
Does anyone who has not? I know nobody has read this book here in this room, or some of you have.
Ooh.
Oh, but you have.
Hey.
Oh, yay!
I wonder if you could talk more about the clothing in the book and also the hair, because it feels like it's not just a character note, but it does seem to be part of the storytelling approach of the book.
The hair, yeah.
And not just a marker of time, but a marker of other things as well. I wonder how that came together for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you.
Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to repeat the question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So this question is about, I'm about to do this wrong, hair and makeup, clothing, and time and how that sort of came to you.
Yeah. Well, I would say also, because it's about a Jewish family, the Jews have hair, like a specific kind of hair that they have to deal with. I mean, everybody has hair they have to deal with, but like that's the hair that I know of. Sarah's over here nodding her head, her beautiful curly head of hair. And so you spend your whole life trying to figure out what to do with your hair. So that, I think that was, and I think that was part of it, like that felt true to like these characters and where they were coming from. But also like it's about, these characters are all kind of exploring what it means to be a woman and what it means to be feminine or not feminine, like how people judge you based on what kind of hair you have. I have a character who ends up shaving all her hair off. And it's always at different lengths throughout the book, and it's like definitely like taking the temperature of the character depending on like where their hair is at. And then in terms of clothes, like I think like in particular Shelley, because she works in corporate America, like some of us don't work in corporate America, although I have worked in corporate America, where you have to dress a certain way in order to be taken seriously or to be respected or to get a promotion or, to be a professional kind of person. And so I wanted to write about that for this character who, before she walks in, she's like a math nerd. She's like a sciencey math, she's a STEM lady. And then she walks into an office and she's like, shouldn't my brain be enough? Shouldn't like the fact that I can do hold all of the information in the universe in my head, shouldn't that be enough? And the answer was no. In that era, and I think it's probably different now, but what I was writing about with this book was now, but by like looking at the past. Also, again, very fun to write about clothes and hair and all of that kind of stuff. And I have written about it before, but I tend to write more about food as like my little pleasure point. And I think And I think, like I said, like pandemic, I was like, I've been wearing the same T-shirt for 1,000 years. What does it feel like? What does it look like to dress up? So, yeah, good question.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't read the book yet, but just based on that question, what was your favorite decade to write about clothes and hair wise?
Oh, I mean, 80s. And the really great designer of this book cover, don't let me, I will drop something.
And we'll all survive.
I'm
It's
just
gonna be
holding
great.
on by a thread here. The designer of this book read the book and said, it's because it said over all these decades, what decade were you thinking of first? And I was thinking of 80s. Because it's just big hair, big poofy shirts.
It was a
things like
loud
that.
decade.
And there was also like, you know that like, it was kind of going around for a while online, that like Stevie Nicks, when she's like singing Silver Springs, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And she's like basically like yelling at Lindsey Buckingham across the stage. And then he does this little like, what about me, guitar solo? Like, I loved you, you know, like that kind of thing. And I was like, so Stevie Nicks is one of my, Shelley is sort of like entranced with Stevie Nicks, and that her music sort of shows up throughout the book too. And so I was thinking a little bit about her, and 70s, 80s Stevie Nicks is very powerful, sexy, witchy kind of stuff too. So even though it's more like my character wished she could be Stevie. Like she wanted to be that. But so like, even if she doesn't dress that way, like as a reference, it's helpful. Like writing against that is really helpful. So I don't know. I like clothes a lot. And or like thinking about clothes. And not even like, I've never been to like Paris for the fashion shows or anything like that, but I like looking at it and thinking about it. And it's so, I appreciate when women dress for other women. And I appreciate that too. And this book is like pretty women-centered book, so.
Heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
In a great way. Any other questions?
But dudes might like it too.
Yeah.
You should read it anyway. Yeah. Anybody else? I came all this way. Yes.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I work here, but I still have a question. You said that the speech that Nancy gives, you knew you were writing up to it, but I'm assuming that, was that speech constructed and you knew you were writing up to it the whole time, or you knew you were writing up to something and it was that speech? Can you talk about what that felt like?
Oh yeah, so this late-breaking speech that shows up, she's asking if I knew what the speech was and I was writing to it versus there's going to be a speech, I'm going to get there. I didn't know what it was. I just knew exactly. I thought she was going to be a little less powerful than she ended up being in it, because I was sort of making fun of her a little bit more when I was thinking about it. And then when I get there, I'm like, actually, I'm still making fun of her. You know, I'm being playful with her. I don't want to say making fun of her, but I gave her a little bit more oomph as I got there. So I had to write the character to know where she was gonna be. But then once I got there, it was definitely, it all came out of me, and I was like ready to tell that story. So, but I didn't know, I wasn't quite sure, but I don't want to give anything away. So I'm like, yeah, but I knew something was going to happen.
Also, isn't like, I did read the book, isn't Nancying and kind of going off in that moment a little bit of a Chekhov's gun, in the sense that like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like someone that you would have spent so much time with, unless.
Yeah, she had to get somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I even then after that I wrote one of the chapters that I threw away where she's like even more over the top, and I was like, no, that's enough. Take a step back. Something had to happen. You know what I mean? Like you put it's like if you put a dead body in chapter 1, then you have to figure out by the end of the book who killed the person. Like if you say she's not happy and she's going to look her entire life to figure out how to be happy, then by the end of the book you better give her a way to be happy, even if it's not necessarily a happy ending. So you have to, like, there's little problems and stakes that we set for ourselves at the beginning, and then we have to right away into it, solving it one way or another. Or you can just be annoying and not really like solve it, but I'd like to solve it.
Yeah.
To solve for it, you know, like as much as I can. You can't answer, the thing is like, I would have to keep writing forever if I solved all their problems. So you have to figure out where it ends.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
Oh.
Hi. How are you? Good.
My question is, what is the difference between writing your first book and writing your 10th?
That's a good question. What is the difference between writing my first book and writing my 10th book? My first book, I didn't know what I was doing. Every book, you don't feel like you know. You feel like you don't know what you're doing. That's always the same across the board. Like every time you start a new book, you're like, I don't know. Do I know how to write? What are words? But I do know that I do know that I will get to the end. Like I'm always really, once I'm like in it, I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to cross the finish line. And then I trust that I will do it. There's also like, a fear component, like I have to pay my mortgage. So I will be getting this book done, but I know that I can. I've just, I've proven it to myself that I can. But the experience of writing is still just so exploratory and like, again, just like you have to like be reading, you have to be thinking, you have to be talking to people, you have to be open to all these kinds of things. But when I did it the first time, I was really stumbling along. And also that aspect of giving yourself permission, which that's the first time you give yourself permission with the first book. With the 10th book, you've already given yourself permission. And that's different, like, I mean, I'm still proud of myself, but I was really proud of myself when I finished that first book. It was really, really meaningful to me. Now it's a little bit more like I'm doing my job. And in fact, I am. But I am. That first book, I was like, maybe nothing's going to happen with it. But I knew I wanted to just give it a shot and try it. So, but it's always scary.
Okay, there was one more question.
Hi, Jamie. I'm just wondering, have you ever gotten any unexpected interpretations or reactions to your work that you were just very surprised by?
Oh, I mean, you mean like in a review or something like that?
Just from like a reader,
I mean, for sure, sometimes people don't give me nice reviews, and I'm like, you're dumb. That's not accurate. I'm sorry for you, how dumb you are. Yeah, I don't know. You can't please again. You don't know where they're necessarily like coming from, like what kind of day they had or anything like that, or like what their tastes are. You have to like try to stay off Goodreads, which is like a minefield. Like because sometimes people will read your book and then they'll just write meh. You're like, I worked for so long, and you just get me a meh. How could you? So there's nothing. I think just like that people don't get what I'm doing, but that's okay. It's not for everybody to get. So I don't think anyone says I write bad sentences though. That would be the insult. And her sentences suck. Like I would not want that. But I don't. Yeah, I mean I prefer it when people get it. I love it when people get it or like really think about it. It means something to be read. Like I love like everything leading up to this moment is there's ups and downs to it, but from now on like the responses I'm going to get are from people who've actually read the book, and that's me. And who want to, like people who like my writing, who are like, yeah, I want to read this. That's really meaningful to me. But we can't control anything, can we?
Also, I mean, you're the type of writer that people don't like halfway get you. Do you know what I mean? That people are just like, I fuck with you. Yeah. or they're like, like Amazon reviewers are like, her book was shipped late.
Yeah.
No stars. I'm
Right.
like, okay, that's time. Jamie's going to be signing, I think, over there. Thank you so much to everyone for coming.
You were great. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys so much for coming. Just like Mary said, Jamie will be signing over there, and just make sure to clear your belongings. We're going to fold up these chairs, and if you're still with us on the YouTube Live, please feel free to click that link to buy these books. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, it was so good. You're so talented.